Grab your drinks and have a seat. It's time for serial killers.
You hear the drop beat. You hear the beat drop and then you're just like, boom. Anyways, hi all. We're here. If you don't know who we are, I'm T.
And I'm Jay.
And we like to talk about serial killers. And really serial killers only, because that's really what this is about. So if you thought we were talking about something else, stop now.
And
it's not
sometimes random shit. But
I mean,
the
obviously
episodes are about serial killers.
We are totally about serial killers. And yes, we are married. So it gets a little bantery, bickery, and fun. So that's what
Basically,
we're here for.
I'm always wrong and she's always right.
Factual. And so welcome. If you are new, welcome, and I hope you enjoy. And if you're not new, I'm glad you're here. Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah. And what we do before we talk about serial killers is talk about what we are drinking during the episode.
And a lot of the times we're drinking coffee, but you know what? I'm not drinking coffee today. I'm drinking lemonade. And by lemonade, I mean Crystal Light lemonade, so it's not even real lemonade.
It's a lemonade to the people who have to drink Crystal Light lemonade, all right?
It's just, the thing is, real lemonade gives me really bad acid reflux. And also the sugar intake, I just can't be having. So I have to just go with something that's, sometimes I just want a little sweetness to my drink. Most of the time I drink water. Oh, but I also was tossed between pink or regular. I really think I prefer pink lemonade over lemonade, but sometimes you just want that lemonade. But
yeah. And I went with fruit punch because, it's starting to be warm in the area we live in. And so it was a good day to just take in some good H2O, but I don't know how other people are.
Jay hates water.
I do not like water. I want flavor. And so I have a really hard time keeping hydrated. And so I buy the flavored water or the packets that can go in your water for flavor.
The Crystal Light ones.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of different ones, but Crystal Light is usually
They're
the one we go with.
No, we do the Crystal Light ones or like the Weilers or whatever.
And what I've been doing to mix it up a little bit because I'm crazy is I'll do a fruit punch, half of a fruit punch, and half of a lemonade. Just give a little different flavor.
Gross.
It's not quite pink lemonade.
So are you
lemonade.
like, would you
see for the people listening, see how she said gross? Because I'm always right or wrong and she's always right.
I'm like, you're always right. That's weird. Actually, what I was going to ask you is, are you an Arnold Palmer fan?
No,
I think
do
that's
not
so
like it.
Nasty.
I think I'd like an Arnold Palmer if it had sugar, but it's like dirt water and lemonade.
But lemonade typically has sugar, so
not enough.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I should be from the South, but I'm not because I want to chew my sugar in my Kool-Aid or lemonade or
Okay, well, I have a fun
drinks.
story. I have a fun story time about sugary drinks, and then we'll get into what we're talking about today. So, fun fact, my sister-in-law is from Tennessee, so she knows all about like what sweet tea and stuff should taste like, although I feel like she doesn't drink sweet tea. Now that when I'm saying that, I don't think she drinks sweet tea because I was raised.
She better not let me down. I hope she does.
She knows how to make sweet tea, but I don't think she drinks it because she's married to my brother. And see, we were raised in Southern California and we were raised off of just plain tea, like sun tea. So I think that's what they drink. But that's not my fun story. My fun story is my brother-in-law. So my brother-in-law is from Jamaica. And when he first was like in our family, we would go out to dinner and stuff, and we used to go to Red Robin. For any of you who know what Red Robin is, it's just like a restaurant, has burgers and chicken and all kinds of stuff. Well, they have this strawberry lemonade, and he would order the strawberry lemonade, and then he would put like 6 or 8 packets of sugar into this strawberry lemonade. And the first time I saw him do it, I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, it's just not sweet enough. And it blew my mind because he literally, he likes this. I don't think he does that anymore, But like when he was first in the United States, because he was in school. I mean, not first in the United States. That's not true because he went to school here. But he was very much, he liked sugary drinks. But funny enough, he doesn't really eat like chocolate and candy.
No.
So fun fact, I've got a very eclectic family and I love every single one of the people who are part of it. And I love our diversity and the fact that we all like love each other. So,
well, and if you have time, hit us up. Tell us what you like, sweet, non-sweet. What's your preferred drink? Is there something you drink that you're like, it's my own concoction and you should try this? Hit us up. Let us know. It'd be cool.
sure. Depending on what the drink is.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get our kids to try anything.
For sure. For sure.
And then we'll ask if it tastes good.
Of course. Like, I'm not going to put myself through anything
No.
at all. Okay. So other than that, one other thing really quick. It just came up on my phone like yesterday or the day before. I am keeping my eye on this. There is nothing to really report, but I'm letting you know that in New England, and by New England, I don't think they mean UK. Pretty sure they mean New England, like, I don't really understand. Okay, I'm going to really make myself sound stupid.
Like in the States.
In
New
the
England.
States, I know there's like an area that is New England, right? So I think that's what they're referencing, which is, I think, like an area of, like, well, you guys know, like New England Patriots, right? Like that area. They might have a serial killer. They might have a serial killer, and they
not
said,
nice, but nice.
not nice, but nice. And it's because they have found an alarming amount of people killed and bodies between like the New England, because I think the New England area shares like states. So it's like if you were to say like I live in the New England area, you could live in like one of like 4 different states, but they're finding these bodies in multiple of these states. So I don't know if there's much to it. They the authorities came out and said, hey, pump the brakes on serial killer talk.
And everybody on the internet's like,
everybody's like, absolutely not,
serial killer.
Because this could very well be a serial killer, and you guys just are keeping this shit under wraps as they always fucking do.
Yeah, so it looks like when we consider New England, it's like Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island.
Okay, so 3 states.
Yeah, which is,
and they have found
that's
bodies.
That's considered southern, and then they have like Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are considered north.
And
New
they
England.
have found bodies in
the southern
part, but in different states,
right?
And bones. So we'll keep our eye on it. We may have a 2025 serial killer. Not that that's a good thing.
Bum, bum, bum.
Not that that's a good thing, but you don't really hear much about serial killers anymore.
And we'll only talk about him when he gets caught.
For sure. It'll depend. It'll depend because on
if it's real time, we're probably talking about it.
Well, I mean, I'll talk about it, but I'm not going to research into it because I try not to get involved in stuff that's still ongoing because the information's always changing. So anyways, speaking of potential serial killers, would you like to listen to who we're talking about today?
Yeah, because we know for sure this one was.
We do. Okay, so we're talking about a man named Alexander Pichushkin. And I fucking looked that shit up on the internet.
Pichushkin.
No, Pichushkin.
Pichushkin.
All right, so Alexander was nicknamed the Chessboard Killer. He is also known as the Bitsa Park Maniac. He had anywhere from 49 to 63 victims. His murder dates are 1992 to 2006. This happened Moscow, Russia. And the method of murder was bludgeoning with a hammer, and a characteristic of his murder is that most of his victims were homeless. So, background on Alexander. Alexander was born April 9th, 1974. He lived with his mother, Natalia, his younger half-sister, and eventually, as they get older, he also lived with her husband and their son in a 2-bedroom apartment. So they lived in like this really small apartment with this whole like family, which it seems like that's fairly common, not really in the United States, but in other countries, I feel like you see like households of multiple generational households.
Yep.
Now, in the beginning stages of Alexander's life, he actually is a relatively normal kid. He was sociable. He was happy. He was hitting all of the milestones as one would expect. He had friends. He played. He laughed. Then one day he had an accident where he fell off of a swing
And hit his frontal lobe.
and hit his head. And the swing like came back and hit him like really hard in his head. Now he fell off the swing backwards though. And this incident ends up causing brain damage to his frontal cortex. Now, damage to the frontal cortex, for those of you that don't know, can cause poor impulse regulation, and it does have a tendency to create more aggressive behaviors. Okay. Now, because again, your frontal cortex controls kind of like your impulse regulation, aggressive regulation. And so if it's damaged, you might have an issue with that. And on top of that, the fact that he was a child, like I think under the age of like 8. The fact that he was a child was even worse. The damage is worse because when you're a child, your brain is not fully developed and your skull is not 100% like developed. And so your brain is not as protected as if you were an adult. So his damage was actually worse than like if he were to have fallen when he was like 16 or 25, right? Now, after this incident, almost immediately after, not like the day of, but like once he was better, it was like there was absolute noticeable behavior changes in him. He became hostile. He became really impulsive and did crazy shit that he would have never done. And he started to become a little aggressive towards people for no reason. And I mean, you could clearly tell that something was not quite right. Now, his mother actually starts to really notice this and she worries about him. So she decides she's going to take him out of their public school setting, which by the way is called mainstream school. So she took him out of the mainstream school, and she enrolls him in a school that is specifically for children with disabilities. His behavior had gotten so bad that he was not able to function like a normal kid in regular school. But even being in a school for children with disabilities, he's still like they couldn't control him. Now, prior to him being moved out of that mainstream school, he was actually bullied by a ton of other students at the school because he changed. He became the kid that everybody made fun of. They were nasty. These kids were nasty. They called him really terrible names and beat him up and made fun of him. And so that was the other reason his mom was like, I've got to pull him out of the school because like he's not going to survive this or he's going to fucking kill somebody. Now, when Alexander gets a little bit older, so like early adolescence, so like teenage years, his grandfather actually starts to recognize that Alexander seems to like be really fucking smart. And he's pissed off. His grandfather's pissed off because he's like, hold on, you've got this kid in a school for disabilities and this school is not doing anything at all to help him other than teaching him how to focus on how to live with his disability. But he's really smart and he needs to be challenged. He needs to have something to do with himself. So the grandfather takes Alexander and moves Alexander into his home. And he basically says like, I'm going to help him and I'm not going to let him just like rot in this school for children with disabilities.
No, and that seems to happen, I think, more often. You know, I think a lot of people who are super brilliant have disabilities.
Yes.
But I think the more we know, the better it's gotten. But back in the day, I think things that wouldn't be classified as disabilities now per se and put you in this school for disability, back then it was.
Well, and the problem with something like that is the same problem that we have in the United States, which is we have special education classes. And the problem is not every child it's not a one size fits all program. So fun little fact, I worked in the school district for like 6 years. And one of my jobs when I worked there was to work with classes with the special education classes, which by far are one of my most favorite things to do because these kids are just a riot. However, one of the things that I discovered is you would walk into a special education class and there would be some kids that were completely immobile and unable to eat by themselves or go to the bathroom by themselves. And they are in the same classroom as somebody that is a high functioning autistic kid. And that doesn't make sense, because that high functioning autistic kid has a totally different learning ability than somebody who is technically labeled as an invalid for the rest of their life. They're not the same, but whenever somebody hears the word special education, they classify you as, you got to go to this class. Even when our son was in school, one of his friends was struggling with reading and math, and he was testing so low on those test scores that his mom was told that he needed to take special education classes, and she agreed to it. And then he came home and said, I don't want to go to those classes. And when she looked into it, it's because here you have a kid who literally was struggling with reading and math, and he was put into a classroom for 2 hours a day. With the classroom was only like 5 kids, and not one kid in that classroom had verbal speaking abilities. So the teachers did not teach him shit. They just had him sit in a room, and he'd just like do paperwork, but it was like coloring and stuff. And she was like, it doesn't make sense as to why that's how it is. So I feel like that's kind of what a school would be like too, is you got to be able to teach kids, but how do you group all these kids? Because every disability looks different.
Yeah, there's such a wide range. And like I
said,
said,
a wide range.
It's gotten better now to where they can narrow it down and put focus and stuff like that. But before, it was like anything that was labeled a disability, you went into this class, and in this class, it's non-functioning.
I mean, you figure this is probably the
individuals.
80s. Yeah, this is probably the 80s. And I mean, yeah, we've come a long way since then. But even, I don't know, man, they can't seem to figure out the right way to do this. But yes, you're right. He probably was just lumped into a room where they basically were like, okay, well, these kids don't do much, so here.
And even if your kid does have a problem and gets good grades, they still won't help you.
Correct. Note that,
but they
Washington
don't see the
State.
Struggle that is happening at home.
For real. Anyways, so because of his grandfather's persistence, his grandfather was like, okay, well, when you come home from school, we're working on things that have to do with like your ability of how smart you are. So his grandfather would teach him all kinds of stuff. One of the things his grandfather taught him was how to play chess. And they found out really quickly that he was really fucking good at it, which I swear to goodness, all the cute people who are super smart, always super good at chess. But anyways, he was so good that he would play in exhibition games against older men in the park that was like not very far from his family's house. And it was called Pizza Park. So he would go there with his grandpa, and he would play all these older men who have been playing chess for years, and he'd beat them. And he was really good at it. And they would look forward to playing with him. And here he is like maybe like 13 years old. And he's just out here just beating all these older men at chess. And he also goes on and plays in like tournaments and things like he's really good at, and he really, really likes chess. Like he really gets it. Now, he actually used chess to get out his aggression that he had been having problems regulating. And so what he would do is he would play these men, and he would use his anger to make his moves to beat people. And then he'd feel good about himself because he like beat this old man, but didn't do anything but beat him at chess, right? During this time that he's doing all of this, he's also regularly being bullied by other children. Now, it's unclear because I read 2 different things. One thing said the grandfather took him out of the school for children with disabilities, but a few of the other articles said that he stayed there in that school while with the grandfather. But it sounds like the grandfather pulled him out and put him in regular school. And then while he was in regular school, he was continually bullied.
Teaching him on the side.
But then he was bullied by all the kids in the mainstream school all the time. So he would go to school, be bullied like crazy, come home, play chess and do stuff with his grandfather, let out his aggressions, yada, yada. Towards the end of his teenage years, his grandfather passes away. So because his grandfather passes away, he actually ends up having to go back and live with his mother because he was living with his grandfather. Now, his grandfather's death was a huge blow to him because this was his mentor. This is the guy who believed.
He was teaching him how to live life.
Yes,
with
he
a
was
disability.
and he believed in everything Alexander did. He ends up turning to alcohol, which he actually started using to try to calm his aggressive behaviors. And it was also a way to cope with the loss of his grandfather. So he turns to none other than vodka.
Of course. It's easy to get.
Now, he would drink large quantities of vodka in one sitting. And he would also continue to go to Pizza Park and play with these older men and play chess. But he started to also share vodka with them because they're all out there drinking vodka, playing the game. He's drinking vodka, playing the game. But he starts to notice that the way that he feels when he drinks vodka does not affect the way he plays chess. He still whips the shit out of these people. He has his wits about him. He is able to make the smart moves, but he realizes the men he's playing, they're just drunken fools. They get like drunk and it affects how they play their chess games. So he starts to pick up on this fact that like, hold on, wait, something's a little different. Now, pretty soon he actually starts to develop another coping mechanism because as we all know, in the world, when you have a coping mechanism like drugs or alcohol, it only takes you so far before your body gets acclimated and you either have to drink more or turn to something else. And this is what happened with him. So he gets to a point where it's like having the vodka is just like not, it just takes the edge off, but not enough for him. It's
drinking water.
Yeah, it's just no big deal. So he actually ends up doing something that was really weird. It shocked me actually when I read it. So he made it a point to where he would always carry a camera, like a video camera with him when he went places. And if he came across children, like children, he would record himself threatening the children. And then he would take the videos back to his home and then he would rewatch them over and over and over because it would make him feel good about the strength and the power that he had over his victims that were children. So one example of this, just so you get an idea, it's not like he like walks up to a group of kids and goes, "Fuck you, little fuckers." It's not like that. He had, on one occasion, he came across these kids and he literally grabbed a young boy, held him up by one leg upside down, and he looked right at the camera and said, "You are in my power now. I'm going to drop you from the window and you will fall 15 meters to your death." He did that kind of shit to kids, to little kids. So he wasn't just like
I'm going to beat your ass. It's like, I'm going to hang you off a cliff.
Yeah. Like legit, he was like that and he got a fucking kick out of it. And it helped kind of control his aggressive urges. But really, is that control? No, because you're being aggressive as fuck, sir. Obviously, this shit does not last forever.
Surprised it lasted more than one time.
Right. So Alexander's first murder was actually in July of 1992. However, I'm going to be very transparent here and tell you that there are two different versions that I have seen. I literally read through, I think, like 10 articles. And it was like almost evenly split on what the supposed first murder story is. So I don't know which one's the real one, but I'm going to tell you both of them. I'm leaning towards one more than the other, but I'm going to tell you both of them. So we will start with the fact that the truth is he's 18 years old when he commits this murder. That's a fact. Now, beyond that, I don't know which one of these is true, but we'll just start with Alexander's 18 years old. And the first story says that he arranged to meet up with one of his friends, Michael. Now, I'm sure it's pronounced differently, but I don't want to assume, so I'm just going to say it the way that we'd probably say it in the United States. It could be Mikhail. It could be Mikhail. We're just going to say Michael. They were to meet in Pizza Park, and they were supposed to talk about a plan to kill 64 people because Alexander and Michael had been talking about stuff, and Alexander had brought up the fact that he thought it would be cool to kill 64 people. Now, when Michael shows up...
Is that because that's how many spaces are on a chessboard?
Do you want to mind your fucking business? Are you kidding me right now? You are correct, but I wasn't going to say that quite.
Was that in your shots?
No, I wasn't. I don't think it's in my story. Anyways, but when Michael shows up, he changes his mind and he decides that it's not such a good idea. He's not really into killing a bunch of people. Like, that's not really his style. I have no idea I don't even know like who this fucking Michael kid is. I don't know if he's like a secret sociopath
serial
or
killer.
I don't know. Maybe it was one of those, they were friends in school and they were like bullshitting about killing people. And then he was like, oh God, he really wants to do this, but I don't. So of course, when he meets up with Alexander and tells him like, yeah, I'm not down to do this. Alexander's like, that's fucking really disrespectful that you would tease me like that.
Get me all hyped up.
He thought he was making fun of him. So he literally took it as, you fucking played me, made fun of me, pretended like you wanted to be my friend.
And now I'm going to rage.
And now okay, whatever. Michael, you're supposed to be my best friend. And all of a sudden now, no, you're just a liar. So he takes it upon himself to strangle him and he throws his body into the sewer in this pizza park. Now, the police do investigate this disappearance, and they find that Michael was the last person seen with Alexander. He is questioned, and he did admit that he did see him that night, but he said, I have no idea where he went. Like, after we left the park, like, we separated. He went his way, I went my way. I don't know where he went. And then there was nothing else that they could even think or find to connect him. And so they never arrested him. They never pressed charges against him. And Michael's body was never found. Now, the other version is that Alexander pushed a younger person out of the window and that this was actually ruled as a suicide, so he wasn't charged with anything. Now, I'll be honest with you. I am leaning towards the Michael story because there was a hell of a lot more detail about the Michael story.
Right.
The articles that I read about the kid being pushed out the window, that's all it said was he pushed somebody out the window and they labeled it a suicide.
It could be one of those things where,
or maybe
there's
it's
like
both.
Some similarities or whatever, so they try to pin it like, oh, well, this was right around the certain time in the same area.
Or
so
my
maybe
other thought is maybe Michael's the person he pushed out the window. Like,
could
you know what I mean?
I mean, because
like
this motherfucker was hanging kids by their feet.
Right. So that's why I'm
window.
like, I don't know. But either way, the main takeaway from this is that he began killing in 1992 and he was 18 years old when he started killing. That's really the main takeaway. Now, on May 17th, 2001, Alexander was playing chess with a man named Yevgeny Pronin. Now, when their game ends, Alexander asks Pronin if he would like to take a walk with him. And he's telling him that, my dog's anniversary of my dog's death is today. And I just want to go visit the grave. And my dog is buried here in Pizza Park. And
over by this manhole cover. Get in.
And the man's like, yeah, of course. Like, because, they just played this game and, they're cool. They're cool. So Alexander brings him kind of like farther into this park, which this park, from what I can gather, it's a fairly large park and it has like treed areas.
So I'm guessing it's kind of like a Central Park type of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea that I get. It's really large though. Like it's not like you can't see one side of the park from the other type thing. So Alexander gets to a spot and he takes out a bottle of vodka, pours them both a cup of vodka, cheers to his dog who had died, takes the drink. They go ahead and they drink their drinks. And then Alexander proceeds to use the bottle of vodka to kill Pronin. He just bashes him over the head and repeatedly hits him in the head until he dies.
It's a thick bottle of vodka.
And then he threw his body into a nearby well. Also fucking gross. In a well, people get their water from wells.
Mm-hmm.
So he throws his body in a well. Now, between May of 2001 and September of 2005, Alexander actually attacks 36 people. So in a 4-year time span, he attacks 36 people and 3 people survive of the 36. So he kills 33 people in a 4-year time span. Now, he was targeting mostly elderly men who were homeless. He would use vodka to lure them to Pizza Park. He would drink with them for a little bit. Then he would hit them over the head with a hammer. And then he would sometimes push the bottle of vodka into the wound that he created on their heads. And then he would dispose of their body in a sewage canal that just so that if on the off chance they weren't dead, they'd drown.
I'm pretty sure if you shove a bottle in an opened head wound,
that's not going to feel good if you're alive, but
you're going to be dead.
Well, clearly 3 people lived. So there's that. Not that he necessarily shoved the bottle in their head, but he hit them over the head with a hammer and then pushed them into the canal. And one of them that I was reading about, the person was still alive when he got hit in the head, but he played dead. And so Alexander thought he was dead and just shoved him off the edge into this canal. And as soon as he hit the canal, he crawled off to the side and just chilled for a hot minute, but he ended up surviving it. Isn't that crazy?
Damn.
Now in October 2005 to June 2006, he actually changes the way he does things. He's no longer going to go after mostly elderly homeless men. Instead, he's killing anyone he wants to. Younger men, younger women, older men, children. He's just killing anybody that he feels like he fucking wants to kill. Now for this, he actually completely changes what he's doing. He's not luring them in with vodka. He's not drinking with them. What he's doing instead is sneaking up behind them and bashing them in their heads. And he actually says he does it for the surprise factor, but he also does it so that he can help to avoid to get their blood on his clothes. So he's completely changed the way that he's doing things at this point. Now, his final murder was in the spring of 2006. Now, I do not have a list of the people he killed because he killed so many people. And again, a lot of them were homeless. So it's a speculation of who it was. The reason they know the number is because he's talked about how many he killed. So they know it from that. But I don't think they know all the names or the ages or anything. But in spring of 2006, 36-year-old Marina Moskolyovas, she's actually one of Alexander's coworkers. Because, by the way, Alexander works at the local grocery store. And he is one of her coworkers. Her body is found in Pizza Park. Now, she had the same injuries as multiple other victims who had been found in Pizza Park. And police actually found a Metro ticket on her. And this led the police to go check the Metro surveillance cameras from the station that this ticket came from.
And guess who she's walking
And
with?
they see her walking with Alexander along the train platform. It's also discovered that she had left a note for her son that told her son that she was going to be going out and walking with Alexander because she was kind of suspicious. He acted a little funny. He had asked if she wanted to go for a walk. She agreed, but she left a note for her son. So obviously they're like, checkmate. Okay.
Right. Haha. Nice one.
Thanks.
Chessboard.
Now, on June 16th, 2006, Alexander is arrested, and he actually rather quickly confesses to the murders. He even takes the officers to Pizza Park, and while he's there, he literally tells them exactly, brings them to all the locations that he had murdered people. And also, he was filmed reenacting the crimes of the detail in extreme detail, like piece by piece, what he would do. And by the way, before people are really weirded out by that, apparently that's actually a normal process for Russian investigations, is to video the person reenacting the crimes.
I mean, with that many, how do you fucking remember all that?
Well, he did the same thing though. So, there's actually, weirdly enough, there's actually a video. I mean, you can watch the video. I just saw a snippet of the video, but it's him. And they have those dummies that you box. They have it's like their upper body and their butt. So they have one of those dummies in this in this wooded area. And they have it set up, and they gave him a hammer, which by the way looked like a fucking hatchet. So maybe that's actually what it was that he used, because it was like the backside of a hatchet is what it looked like. So maybe that's what his version of a hammer is. Because when he was in detail reenacting what he did, and it shows him walk up, and he was like, I just walked up, and he would slam. He literally takes the hatchet and fucking hits the dummy really hard in the back of the head. And he's like, that's how I did it. It's a little
That'd
creepy.
be chilly watching.
It is. When I was doing the
especially
research, I was like, damn.
If you're a cop there watching him do it, or an investigator, because he's probably getting some satisfaction off of reliving it.
I know, it's really weird. So I saw, if you want to see it, I'll show you the video. It was really creepy. So anyway, so he reenacts it, and then they also find, spoiler J, they also find a chessboard during their investigation, and on this chessboard, 61 out of the 64 squares had dates written on them. He actually had said that he killed 61 people. He's also changed his thing a couple times and said 63, but he's saying that every date on that chessboard they found in his home was the date that he murdered somebody, because his goal was to kill 64 people, which was the amount of squares on a chessboard.
Makes you wonder what he would have done when he was finished with the 64.
I'll actually be able to answer that. Now, he was put on trial the following year, and on October 24th, 2007, Alexander is actually found guilty of 49 murders and 3 counts of attempted murder. And it took over an hour for the full verdict to be read, and this was actually due to the vast number of charges that he was convicted of. So it took them over an hour to read his charges, because they got to read the charges,
for
and then
each person.
Yeah. Now he was sentenced to life in prison. Why? Because Russia no longer has the death penalty, which I didn't know that. I thought they did. However, there was actually a push to reinstate the death penalty for him, so that they could put him to death, because that was what they felt. Now,
just for him? Just like,
no,
hey, we're turning it on, we're turning it off.
Not just for him, but they were saying this is why the argument is, yes, we understand that the death penalty doesn't seem the best, whatever. It's not the best
But people like that
punishment.
deserve it.
But somebody like that does deserve to absolutely not live. So we should reinstate the death penalty for extreme cases like him. It did not happen, but that's what they were pushing for. Now, part of his life in prison is that he was to serve the first 15 years in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
brutal.
I guess that's the harshest.
I mean,
you
I
could
think
do
15
other than
years
death.
of like hard labor breaking rocks with a pickaxe.
Funny you say that. Oh, I didn't write this in my shots, but the prison that he is at is considered the worst prison in Russia. And after he got out of solitary confinement, he has to do hard labor. That's part of what they do at this prison for the rest of his life.
Good.
So he does do hard labor, but he had to spend the first 15 years in solitary, but he still did hard labor while in solitary. They had him,
your hour
secluded.
a day. Yeah.
And so he has it's very, again, literally one of the worst prisons. I didn't write down the prison, but it's one of the worst prisons in Russia is where he's at. Now, Alexander did try to appeal this sentence because he said it was too harsh.
For that many people, no, it's not harsh enough.
Then in April 2025, so literally just this month, actually, I guess in the beginning of the month, this was in an article, but he actually has come out and said that he actually has another 11 people he would like to confess to.
So he can get his chessboard.
Now, that is the story of Alexander Pichushkin. Would you like this shot?
If I haven't ruined him, yeah.
You haven't. The only one you ruined was the
chessboard.
Which also good thinking because first of all, I didn't know there were 64 squares on a chessboard, so I wouldn't have known. Okay, so the shots are, so Alexander started killing the same year a man named Andrei Chikatilo was convicted of 52 murders because he was another serial killer. So Alexander decided he was going to start killing after Andrei went to jail and was convicted. Now, Alexander said about his very first murder, again, the one that is controversial of what he actually did. But what he says is the first murder, it's like first love. It's unforgettable. Again, he did.
I think there's multiple serial killers that'll say that, though, like the first one.
Absolutely.
And then they kill again to try to get that back. But it's like drugs and everything else. You can never get that
This
one
is,
back.
I think, why you see some of them escalate. Because
because they're trying to do different stuff.
To get that same
that
high.
feeling back.
Yeah, to get that same, high that they got. Okay, we've already said this, but I'm saying
I'm good. I'm high on life.
I've already said this, but we're just going to say it. So at one point, Alexander did state that he was going to kill 64 people, which was the amount of squares on a chessboard. However, he later recanted this and he actually said, no, I would have killed way beyond 64. So he would not have stopped at 64.
Was just his first goal.
Yeah, he would not have stopped at 64.
No.
So the answer to your I wonder what he would have done, he just would have kept killing. Actually, he probably would just started up another board.
He would have been like, got my chessboard done, time for checkers.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like if he liked doing the chessboard thing, he would just make another goal of 64 more chessboard killers or whatever. Now, during Alexander's trial, he was actually kept in a special glass box to protect him from the public.
That seems like Hannibal Lecter.
And during his trial, he did ask the judge to add 11 counts to his charge to bring the total to 60 because he wanted to be better than his idol, Andrei Chikatilo, which is the other serial killer.
And that's probably why he's saying, I got 11 more, add 11 more. I want to be the biggest.
Uh-huh. And also, by the way, he is known right now as the second most prolific serial killer in Russia.
Behind who?
Andrei.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, in 2017, Alexander does admit that he has had over 80 women writing him in jail. What the fuck is wrong with you people? This man murdered people. Why are we writing to him in jail? What is wrong with you people? I swear. Every time the prison gets some sort of a fucking bullshit love letter from somebody to a serial killer,
burn
that shit, and then fucking call the cops and have the cops just monitor that person because that's weird as hell. Now, Alexander said that deciding whether his victims lived or died made him feel like he was God. And he said and I quote, "In all the cases, I killed for only one reason. I killed in order to live, because when you kill, you want to live."
Not sure how that makes sense, but
It makes sense in his brain.
yep.
Now, the final shot I have is Alexander Pichushkin is quoted as saying, "Life without murder is like a life for you without food. I felt like the father of all these people, since it was me who opened the door for them to another world."
Yeah, that's just fucking demented.
Which is why they wanted to reinstate the death penalty for
Yeah.
him. Because they even kept talking about how he has no remorse. He has, whatever. However, and I'm always going to come with the however, due to the fact that he had frontal cortex damage. He might actually not have the ability to feel remorse, first of all. Second of all, his impulse control and aggressiveness, very well. There's a very, very, very good possibility that had he never fallen and hit his head, that he would have never been a serial killer.
Yeah.
And the saddest part of this whole thing is his mother. They did a whole, which by the way, I do not know. I'm just going to say this. GQ, what the fuck? GQ did a whole article on this, which is GQ mag. I'm like, why the hell is GQ doing this? But whatever. So they did an article, and when I was reading through the article, they had talked to his mother at the time, and it was really sad because she literally said he's not a bad kid. He was.
But it makes
never
you
a bad
wonder,
kid.
you hit your head and it damages your impulse control and everything, but that still doesn't equate to idolizing another serial killer. So there's other things that I think were going on because he idolized this other serial killer.
But did he idolize him, or was he in competition with him?
Either,
You know what I mean?
Either
to
way.
Me, but again, the aggressive behavior, all the aggression and all these other things, the things that triggered this. What I'm saying is he may have never done anything. Had he never hit his head, he may have never, one, he wouldn't have had probably as aggressive behavior, which means he wouldn't have turned to alcohol to try to curb his aggression. And then he wouldn't have used chess as an aggressive outlet. And then he wouldn't have harmed or tried to harm or threaten children as an aggressive outlet. It just progressively got worse. However, we also have to remember that even in today's world, we don't have solutions for people who have aggressive behavior problems. We don't. I mean, we have like therapy and shit, but that doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
No, a lot of that is just shows you how to cope.
How to cope with it. You could put him on some sort of medication that would make him like a zombie, but is there things that could have been done? Sure. However, like I said, when you listen to his mom, she talks about how, yes, he had his problems, and she said he overnight became a completely different person after his accident. One day he was her loving Alexander, and the next day he was just out of control. And she talks about how that's why she put him in a special school, because she didn't know what to do. And then she goes on and says things like, she still loves him. He's her son. He's not a bad person. She doesn't understand why he did the things he did. But then she also says things like, she blames herself. She talks about, maybe I didn't raise him properly. I did the best that I could. And it's no, ma'am, he's not a childhood traumatic childhood.
Yeah, you weren't doing drugs and beating them and doing all sorts of shit.
No, he would have had a very, very normal life, but he had an injury, and maybe that was it. Maybe not. I mean, there is a good chance he was just born shitty, and it just didn't show until later in life. I have a hard time believing that. I feel like because it happened literally overnight, he's not the only serial killer we've talked about that had a head injury that changed his behavior overnight. But it was really sad because she sat through his trial. She was the only one who was there to support him at all. And she would, at the end of it, she would stare at him. And then she, at one point, looked down and she shook her head and she was just like, I guess this is just my son. And I did something wrong. She blames herself. And it's really sad to read that that's how she feels. But you do have psychologists who have come forward and said, do you really think a man like that deserves the death penalty because what happened to him? We firmly believe that the reason he is the way he is through psychological testing. he has zero remorse. He has no problem talking about it. He has all these signs and symptoms that would make you think of a sociopath. However, it also is linked to brain damage. And that's literally, he had brain damage. But to that I say, we don't use that shit as an excuse for bad behavior, sir. If you kill 50 fucking people and you don't care that you killed them, maybe you being dead would be better.
Yeah.
But he's not getting out of prison ever. So he's serving his time. And he has actually, he did an interview in 2017, I think it was. And when they were talking to him, he was talking about how this has been the worst experience I've ever had. I'm doing hard labor. I'm this, that. And I'm like, wham, bitch.
At least you're able to experience shit.
Like, cry me a river, sir. I don't care.
There's a ton of other people that can't because of you.
Yeah, exactly. So for me,
Sucker.
these are the ones that are hard. These are the ones that are hard for me to completely hate him, because I really think that he's one of those few that it might have been out of control for him. It might have been that he would kill these people because his aggressions would get so bad, and this was his release. Does not mean that I would excuse what he did. He deserves to be in jail. But at the same time, it makes me sad, because I sit there and I go, but what kind of a person would you have been if you wouldn't have gotten a brain injury when you were like a young child? And it's always scary to think that, because it's like, that could happen to anybody.
Yep.
Anybody's child could have a brain injury that could trigger them to become, seriously, somebody who can't control themselves.
Yeah, like when you headbutted me. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, impulse control alone, if your child can't regulate impulsive actions, that's a scary thing. And again, it's not like we have solutions for that in our world now.
We really don't. And that's the hard part, is when people do get brain damage and get injuries, there's nothing we can do.
You can just try to teach them how to cope and deregulate themselves, but that's not always going to work.
Or, like you said, put them on medication that
zombifies
they're like
them,
a zombie. Who wants to do that?
And you have the same situation with people who are born sociopaths. It's like, we don't really have a solution for it. And it's like, not all sociopaths are serial killers. They just don't have an ability to have emotions. And it's just kind of like, how do you also can't go around accusing every person who's a sociopath or every person who has brain damage or has any sort of traumatic brain injury that they're going to be a serial killer. So it's like, how do you can't know until they start doing bad stuff.
Yep.
So the only thing is, and then I'll be done. My only thing is, he had 3 surviving victims. And the only thing I can't understand is, why did none of them
unless they were the last 3.
They weren't, though. So it's like,
know.
I'm sitting here going, why did none of you point fingers at him? Either one, if they were homeless, to be fair, if they were homeless, maybe you didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
For 2, if you are one of the ones that was attacked from behind, maybe you didn't see him. But one of them in particular, he did. And I feel like they played chess beforehand. So it's like, why did we not turn him in? Like, why are we not going to the police and being like, hey, I just got attacked by this person.
And maybe you got bashed in the head.
Maybe you don't remember, and now you have a brain injury.
There's times where they say, like, when you get a concussion and whatnot, you don't remember, like, the few minutes before that. So
sure. That
could have been the same thing.
Could be. Yes, it could. Anyways, that's the story of Alexander Pichushkin. The second most prolific serial killer in Russia, also known as the Chessboard Killer.
Well, there you go.
And that's it. I'm out.
Checkmate.
I'm not out. Checkmate. We're done.
Yeah.
Anyways. So if you like what you hear, because, we like to do this, just make sure you're following us. So whatever you're listening to us on, make sure you click that plus button or that follow button, because then we'll give you a notification every Thursday when our episode drops, so that you don't have to search for us. It'll just pop up on your phone and says, hey, Fatal Blend, they just dropped another episode. And then you can go, oh, thanks.
Yep.
And
it motivates us to do more. Like, we do like doing this, but the more people we have listening, the more we enjoy doing it.
We do. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us and hearing our story about the Chessboard Killer, even though Jay tried to ruin it. And ruin my surprise.
I got a good brain.
So I guess I'm just going to say, I'll catch y'all next time. Goodbye.
And I'll follow that up with the bye-bye.
Remember to lock your doors and bar your windows. Until next time.